On May 7, 2024, Mariam Leah Abramson died on the delivery table, and came back with a message that could shake the world. A 33-year-old Jewish schoolteacher from New York, Mariam expected to hold her newborn, not leave her body and meet the very man her faith never acknowledged, Jesus. What he showed her about Israel, world politics, and the future of humanity will challenge everything you think you know. This isn't just an NDE. It's a divine disruption.
Mariam Leah Abramson was 33 years old when everything changed. Up until that day, her life was simple, happy, and full of promise. She lived in a quiet suburb in New Jersey, not far from where she'd grown up. She worked as a speech therapist at a local school, helping children find their voices. It was work that felt meaningful. Every time a child finally spoke a word they had struggled with for weeks, Mariam felt like she was doing exactly what she was meant to do. She'd been married to Eli for almost 6 years. They met at a friend's wedding, clicked over coffee afterward, and never looked back. Eli was steady, kind, and funny in a dry sort of way. They had just moved into a cozy brick home with a blue front door and a tiny fenced yard. It was their dream house, or at least the beginning of it. And now, finally, after years of waiting and hoping, they were expecting their first child. A little girl. Mariam wasn't ultra-Orthodox, but her Jewish faith was still important to her. She lit candles on Shabbat, kept a kosher home, and went to synagogue on the high holidays. She believed in God, though she didn't think too much about theology. Her connection was more cultural than mystical. Being Jewish meant belonging. It meant history, family, songs in Hebrew, and her grandmother's stories. It gave shape to her world. Pregnancy had been a blessing. She loved watching her belly grow, feeling the kicks, planning the nursery with Eli. Every week brought something new: baby clothes folded into drawers, books on sleep training, names scribbled on sticky notes. They settled on a name early, Yael. Life was sweet. Calm. Predictable. Mariam had no reason to expect anything out of the ordinary. She had never had any health scares. The pregnancy was healthy. All the checkups had gone smoothly. They'd even booked a newborn photographer and packed the hospital bag. She thought she knew what was coming: labor, delivery, a few hard weeks of no sleep, and then a new kind of normal. But what happened next was not in any of the books. It wasn't something she or anyone could have imagined. Because on the day she gave birth to her daughter, Mariam died. And that was only the beginning. It started with pressure. Then pain. Then something sharper, deeper, wrong. One minute Mariam was pushing, gripping Eli's hand so hard his knuckles turned white. The next, there were alarms. A nurse's voice rose. Another shouted, hemorrhage, and suddenly the room exploded into movement. She couldn't see much through the sweat and tears, but she could feel everything shifting. A weight dropped into her chest, and the pain became strange, distant. Like it belonged to someone else. She heard her name, then muffled shouts, and then, nothing. No pain. No sound. Just a quiet that felt too deep to belong to a hospital. That's when she realized she was no longer in her body. Mariam hovered above the room, watching the chaos unfold like a scene in a movie. Her body was pale, limp. Blood pooled beneath her. A doctor pressed down on her stomach. Another barked orders. Nurses moved fast, panicked but practiced. And in the corner, Eli was crying. She had never seen him like that, shoulders shaking, mouth open, a kind of pain that made time stop. It should have scared her. But it didn't. There was a strange peace in the stillness of being out of her body. She felt light, untethered. The beeping monitors, the cold fluorescent lights, the blood, they all seemed far away. She had no weight, no breath, no fear. Just awareness. Then something shifted again. A pull, gentle but firm, like a current in deep water. The hospital room faded. The noise, the light, the panic, it all disappeared. She was being drawn somewhere else. Not up, not down. Just away. She passed through what felt like a veil, not fabric, not mist, but something between. A boundary. And on the other side, everything changed. She had crossed into a realm that made the world she knew feel flat and gray by comparison. There was light, but not like sunlight. It shimmered and pulsed, alive somehow. The air hummed with a kind of music that had no notes but filled her with something she didn't have a word for. Mariam had died. But she was more awake than ever. The light surrounded her like a blanket, but it didn't hurt her eyes. It wasn't sunlight. It wasn't anything like earthly light at all. It was soft but endless, like it came from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And the colors, there were colors she had no names for. They moved through the air like they were alive. Everything felt full. Every breath she didn't take made her feel more alive than she ever had on earth. There was no pain. No fear. No time. She had the strange sense that this place had always existed. That it was more real than anything she'd ever known, and she was just now waking up to it. Then she saw him. A man stood a few feet away, waiting. Not walking toward her, just waiting. He radiated something she couldn't explain: peace, kindness, power, love. All at once. It poured out of him like sunlight and ocean waves and music all at the same time. And his eyes, those eyes held lifetimes. They looked straight through her, not in a way that exposed her, but in a way that made her feel deeply known. "Who are you?" she asked without speaking. And the answer came not in words, but in understanding. "Jesus." Her thoughts scrambled. "Jesus? But I'm Jewish." It wasn't an accusation. It was confusion. She had grown up in synagogue. Her family had observed every major holiday, lit the Shabbat candles, kept kosher. Jesus was not part of their story. He was a figure in someone else's religion. A name whispered intention, not reverence. He smiled, calm, patient. "I know who you are, Mariam," he said, and though his mouth didn't move, she heard it deep inside her. "I've always known you." Her heart trembled, not from fear, but from recognition. She had never believed in Jesus. She hadn't needed to. But now, standing in front of him, she felt a deep, immovable truth settle over her like warm rain. This wasn't a stranger. This wasn't a mistake. He knew her. Every question she had ever asked. Every time she wondered if anyone really saw her. Every doubt, every prayer, every unspoken hope, he had held them all. And still, part of her wanted to object. "But my people don't believe in you. How can this be real?" Jesus answered, as if reading her thoughts. "You were taught many things. Some true, some not. But none of it ever changed how I saw you." His gaze softened. "I don't see labels. I see hearts. And yours has always belonged to me." Tears welled up inside her, though she had no eyes to cry with. This wasn't conversion. It wasn't religion. It was something far deeper, recognition. She didn't understand all of it yet. But she understood this: she was known, and she was loved. Completely. Under the soft light of that realm, everything shifted again. Jesus turned to Mariam and said, "There is something you need to see." He reached out his hand, not commanding, just offering. And when she took it, the garden-like atmosphere around them dissolved. In its place came scenes, vivid as life, unfolding like windows in the air. The first was Israel. She recognized it immediately. The skyline of Jerusalem, the Golden Dome, the Western Wall. But this wasn't a postcard. This was living and breathing, but tense, weighted. She saw soldiers on the streets, families ducking into shelters, children clinging to mothers. The fear was thick in the air. Then came explosions. Smoke. Screams. Not just from one side. From both. She wanted to turn away. She wanted to argue. She wanted to say, but we're just protecting ourselves. Jesus didn't flinch. He stood next to her, steady and full of sorrow. This is the cost of forgetting who you are. She turned to him. But we're defending our people. We're surrounded by enemies. You were called to be a light, he said gently. Not a weapon. She flinched. So we're just supposed to let ourselves be killed? No, he said, and there was steel in his voice now. But strength without righteousness is just noise. And fear turned into vengeance is not justice. Your nation has forgotten me. The image changed. She saw a man at a podium, David Nathan, a stand-in for the real-world leader she knew all too well. Charismatic. Forceful. Confident. He was speaking to a crowd, declaring strength, protection, security. But Mariam could feel something behind the words. Pride. Ego. Fear disguised as resolve. He thinks he's doing the right thing, she said. Yes, Jesus replied. But he listens more to generals than to prophets. He trusts alliances more than me. He thinks he is guarding Israel, but he is guiding her into greater danger. She didn't want to believe it. David Nathan was a national hero. A protector. A symbol of survival. How could this man be on the wrong path? But then she saw the consequences. Refugee camps. Bombed out buildings. Not just in Israel, but in Gaza. She saw Palestinian children crying over lifeless bodies. She saw grief on both sides. Miriam's heart broke. Jesus looked at her with eyes full of the deepest love and the deepest grief. Do you think I only weep for Jewish children? His question crushed something inside her. She had spent years avoiding those images on the news. She told herself it was too complex. That it wasn't her fault. That the other side hated them anyway. But standing here, none of that mattered. She saw the humanity. All of it. But what can be done, she whispered. The scene changed once more. She saw people, not politicians or generals, but ordinary people, Jews and Arabs, sitting together. Praying. Crying. Listening. It was slow. Fragile. Real. This, Jesus said. This is how peace begins. Not through treaties written in fear or bombs dropped in retaliation. But in the hearts of people who choose love instead of hate. Repentance instead of pride. Truth instead of history rewritten to justify cruelty. Mariam swallowed hard. This will never happen. Jesus didn't argue. Not easily. But it will. Because I am already stirring hearts. Will David Nathan change? Jesus paused. No. Not enough. His time will pass. Mariam didn't know what to say. She had voted for him. Believed in him. Leadership that forgets compassion cannot last, Jesus said. Then he looked into her eyes. This is why I'm showing you this, Mariam. Because the world will not expect what is coming. But my people must return to me, not through might, but through mercy. She nodded slowly, tears now falling in some way she didn't understand. It was all so much. Israel is still chosen, he said. But chosen for purpose, not privilege. You were meant to reveal my heart to the world. That purpose still stands. But first, your heart must return to me. The vision faded, but the weight of it stayed with her. She had come expecting comfort. What she received was truth. And truth, she now saw, was heavier than she imagined. But also more beautiful. The garden faded again, and another scene took shape in front of me, this time more modern, more political. I recognized the setting immediately, an international summit. Cameras flashed, leaders sat around a long table, flags behind them. And standing in the center, shaking hands with Israeli and Arab delegates, was a man I never expected to see here. He was loud, brash, unmistakable. A larger-than-life personality with wild hair and a defiant posture. Though his name wasn't spoken, I knew exactly who he was meant to be. "Is that?" I started to say. Jesus nodded. "Yes. That man will help forge a peace many thought impossible." I stared at the scene, stunned. "But, he's not exactly the picture of righteousness." "No," Jesus said, calmly. "But I don't choose people the way the world does. I use the willing, the flawed, the unexpected. I've always done that." I watched as the man smiled broadly, signing documents. Some people cheered. Others looked skeptical. "Is this real peace?" I asked. "Or just political theater?" "It will not be perfect," Jesus said. "But it will be the beginning of something. A softening. A preparation. Not because he understands my full plan, but because he doesn't follow the old patterns. And that makes space for new ones." I felt conflicted. This was a man so many people criticized, especially in my community. I had my own doubts. He was divisive, arrogant, sometimes cruel with his words. And yet here he was, playing a role in something sacred. "So, this is God's plan?" "This is part of it," Jesus said. "You must understand, it's not about politics. It's about orchestration. I use who I will, how I will. What you see as chaos, I use as contrast. What you see as unlikely, I use to make my point clear." The scene faded again, but the feeling stayed with me. God wasn't bound to reputations, polls, or public approval. He was doing something far bigger than any politician could grasp. I looked at Jesus and asked, "Why show me this?" "Because the world will be shocked," he said. "But you won't. And when it begins, your voice will help others understand what's really happening." That's when I realized, this wasn't just about who was leading, it was about what God was preparing beneath the headlines. The scene shifted again, and I found myself standing on a high point overlooking Jerusalem. But it wasn't the Jerusalem I knew. The city looked familiar, yet transformed. There was a stillness in the air, like the world was holding its breath. Then I saw it, on the Temple Mount, a structure gleaming in the sunlight. A temple. New. Massive. Majestic. The third temple? I asked. Jesus stood beside me. "Yes. But I thought the Dome of the Rock, it still stands," he said. "But what you're seeing is what will be. Not through war. Not through conquest. But through a solution no one sees coming." We moved closer. Inside, it wasn't what I expected. There were no animals, no blood, no smoke rising. Instead, it was quiet. Peaceful. There were people inside from all over the world, different languages, different clothing, different prayers. "This is a house of prayer," Jesus said. "For all nations." As it was always meant to be. Rabbis stood beside imams. Pastors beside monks. Not in debate, but in conversation. They were listening. Crying. Laughing. Sharing stories of dreams, visions, and encounters, many of them with him. I looked at Jesus, confused. "Is this really possible?" He nodded. "With man, no. With God, everything is." Then I saw more. The scene around the temple expanded, and time seemed to move faster. I saw buildings rising, technologies emerging, tools that could make deserts bloom and cities more livable. Israel was leading in innovation, solving problems others thought were unsolvable. But alongside that, I saw disasters, floods, fires, heat waves swallowing entire towns. People scrambling to adapt. And yet, amidst the panic, I saw moments of unity. People helping each other without asking where they were from, what faith they held. "It's going to get harder," Jesus said softly. But hearts will open in the fire. The pace of change was dizzying. Old systems crumbled. New ways of living emerged. But through it all, the temple remained, glowing with light that didn't come from the sun. What am I supposed to do with all this? I asked. Tell them what you saw, he said. Not to scare them. To prepare them. A shift is coming. And those who cling to old battles will miss the new thing I am doing. As I stood in that place of promise and upheaval, I didn't feel afraid. I felt small, yes, but held. Like I was watching the dawn of something holy. And I knew I couldn't keep it to myself. I turned to Jesus, overwhelmed. How can I go back after seeing all this? How do I explain it? His gaze was steady, full of that same love I'd felt from the first moment. You must return, Yael. My heart sank. They won't believe me. My family will say I imagined it. My rabbi will call it heresy. I'll be alone. They will say you're crazy, he said gently. Say it anyway. His words didn't soften the fear in me, but they steadied it. I thought of my parents, of our Shabbat dinners, of the quiet reverence we had for God, but not like this. Not for him. And now I was supposed to tell them I had met Jesus? You were not chosen for comfort, he said. You were chosen for truth. For courage. For such a time as this. But what if they leave me? What if I lose everything? Jesus didn't answer right away. He walked a few steps ahead, then turned. Even if it costs you everything, speak. Even if no one listens at first, speak. Truth plants seeds even in hard soil. He moved closer and placed a hand on my shoulder. The strength that poured into me wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, steady, like being anchored during a storm. You will not be alone, he said. I am with you always. When you speak, I will be in your voice. When you weep, I will be in your tears. When you are rejected, I will be your shelter. His words wrapped around my fear like a bomb. I didn't feel brave, but I felt ready to try. I'm just a woman, I whispered. He smiled. You're mine. That is more than enough. I looked at him one last time. The light behind him shimmered like a curtain gently moving in a breeze. Will I remember all of this? Yes. In the moments you need it most, it will come. I felt the pull begin again, that same force drawing me back to the world I had left. I wanted to cry out, to beg to stay, but I didn't. Go, Jesus said softly. Tell them what I showed you. Tell them I have not forgotten them. That I never stopped loving my first people. That I am calling them still. The light around me dimmed. The peace faded. But his presence, his love, remained, etched into every part of me. The first thing I felt was pain, sharp, hot, jarring. Then sound. Beeping. Shouting. A bright light above me, but this one was fluorescent, not holy. She's back. A voice said. We've got a rhythm. I blinked. My body felt heavy, foreign. A nurse was crying. The doctor looked stunned. Later, I learned I had been clinically dead for 9 minutes. No heartbeat. No oxygen. And then, suddenly, life again. No explanation. They said it was a miracle. I knew they were right, but not for the reasons they thought. 2 days later, I held my daughter for the first time. She was tiny, warm, alive. Hannah. Grace. That's what her name means. Grace we didn't deserve. Grace we were given. As I held her against my chest, I remembered everything. Every word. Every image. Unlike a dream, it hadn't faded. It was as clear as the moment I left my body. I didn't talk about it at first. Just told Daniel that I'd seen something. But the words started pressing on me, like they couldn't stay quiet any longer. So I started writing. Talking. Telling. At first, to close friends. Then to my rabbi. Then, slowly, to others. Most didn't know what to do with it. Some tried to correct me. Some just smiled politely and changed the subject. A few leaned in, eyes wide, and said, "Tell me everything." So here's my message, to whoever you are. If you're Jewish, please listen. Jesus is not who you've been told. He never stopped loving us. He never walked away. The separation wasn't his choice. If you're Christian, understand that God's covenant with Israel still stands, but it's deeper than politics. He weeps for all people, not just the ones who believe they're on the right side. If you're Muslim, know this, Jesus sees you too. He told me he is appearing to many of you in dreams. He is reaching for you with love. And if you're skeptical, that's okay. I was, too. But something happened to me. Something real. I can't force you to believe it. But I can't stay silent either. I died. I met Jesus. And he sent me back to say this: the veil is thinning. Something is coming. And love. Not power, not fear, is the only way through.